Hey guys, how's it going? So what am I working on now? Well, I've got a 2013 Subaru Outback. And a customer's complaint is the brakes sound like they're grinding. They're not grinding though. However, the left side front especially was worn down quite a bit more than the right front. And I think either the pads are hanging up in the carrier or bridge or bracket, whatever you want to call it. I think they're either hanging up or the slides are no good. Not that they're no good, they're hanging up. So anyway, let's see what we got here. Now the back brakes are in perfect shape, but if you look close, oops, let's turn the light on. If you look close, can you see the grooves in that? I mean, it's just like a lot of like hard spots in the pads and created some excess wear there, but it feels like an old record. So we're going to be doing pads and rotors, and if you look, see how far down this pad is inside the bridge here, bracket? Let's go to the other side. See that? It's not as severe. It's not as far down. So these pads are not worn nearly as much. And the grooving isn't as bad either. It does have grooves on this side too. And that's the reason we're replacing these, because of the grooves. Either this thing sat for a while at some point, which it might have, judging by the rust that's right there, and then when the brakes were applied and it rubbed in, it eventually did that. It's also got a little bit of a brake pulsation. So, but we're going to start on this side, because this side is the side with more of an issue. So let me get some wrenches, and we're going to start to get this apart. This should be 13s, so let me get a wrench so we can get that apart. All right, so those are actually 14s. So I'm going to crack them free. I'm actually not even going to take them out just yet. I'm going to go get my C-clamp, because I'm going to try to compress this with the C-clamp on the vehicle. Now this one's a little tight. That doesn't really matter because this is just the retaining bolt right there. Might have some Loctite, who knows. See that lower pin is moving? This upper pin is not. This upper pin is not moving. So I got a feeling, yeah, this thing. The boot's fine, but the boot for some reason popped off of here. I don't know if somebody did something, but that's the reason for that. I don't want to compress that actually with a C-clamp just in case, because I don't want to drive this thing further into the caliper bridge. That looks fine. Put that down to the side. Put this one off. Side. Now we're going to take caliper. We're just going to stick it up like that. I'm not going to hang it down by the hose. Like I've said before, hang the caliper, which I'm going to in a minute, but right now just sitting in there is fine. So let me see. The pads, and if the pads move, so that's not really too much of a concern. But this pin is seized. This one moves nice and free. This one doesn't move at all. All right, let's get the pads out of there. Let me hang that caliper. Now, I've explained before, I got these from the parts store. These are what they use to hang exhaust pipes on the racks in the back of the parts store. This slips into the exhaust tube and like kind of locks it in place. But since I have a relationship with the parts store, they gave me a few of them. And do that, and just hang the caliper. Hang it wherever you want. I prefer it out of the way. Now this, I'm going to try to break this free on the car first. Let me get a small screwdriver or something so I can get these out. Sticking a little bit isn't bad, but there, as you see too, this thing was just about shot. You can't see that, right? Yeah. Yeah, just about shot. All right, let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so now let me go get something to see if I can't move this. All right, so here's a 17mm wrench. I'm trying to get the 17mm wrench on here, and see, it does move, so that's a big plus. I've actually seen it. Okay, if these things are completely seized, you can anticipate having to change these boots. Yes, you can get them from the parts store, but you're going to heat this up with a torch. Now remember, there's grease on the inside. The grease will boil. When it boils, it creates pressure, a lot of pressure. So you're trying to work this back and forth. What will happen is the pressure will start pushing it out. I worked with somebody, not the brightest bulb on the tree, that's for sure, and he actually had this thing in a vise, and he stood in front of it while he was trying to get this out. And as he was heating this thing up and trying to loosen this up, this thing shot out, hit him in the chest, broke his sternum. He was taken away in an ambulance. So, yeah, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the tree. So, if you are heating it up, don't stand in front of this. This can become a projectile. I'm going to grab that with vice grips, actually, because I can't tug on it at the same time. Now, having good vice grips, a fresh pair of vice grips, really makes a difference. So, if you have vice grips that are old and whatnot, and the teeth are a little bit worn, you might be well served getting yourself new ones. I prefer Irwin. These were actually from Matco, I believe. Or no, Cornwell. These are vice grips. I'll tell you that right now. These are vice grips, just rebranded. All right, so what we have to do is we're going to have to wire wheel this, clean this up. Let's get this bridge off of here. All right, so those are 17s that hold the caliper bracket in place. See those? Right there and right there. So let's see. Can I focus in on them? It's kind of hard. And I really can't wait till I can afford a new camera system here. Never break them free with the gear wrench end. I've explained that before. Never do it. You will break your gear wrenches. Or, if you don't break it right away, you just shorten the life of it tremendously. And always leave one of the bolts in while you're taking the other one out. Reason being is because otherwise, a lot of times, you'll have the bracket flying all over the place as you're trying to get it apart. So that bottom one is kind of tight coming in and out. So I got a funny feeling I might have some rust on it, or it just could be excessive amount of Loctite from the factory. That's possible. But we're going to wire wheel all of this stuff. Yeah, a little bit of rust, nothing terrible. This vehicle was definitely up north at some point in its life. It's not terrible. I'm used to a lot worse being from New York. All right, so now the bridge comes off. Now we're going to clean all of this, but we also got to get the rotor off. I'm going to try whacking it with a hammer, see if it comes off. I don't mind hitting the back of the rotor with a hammer because we don't care about the rotor. We are replacing it. And she's not happy. All right. On to the next step to try to figure out how to get this off. Hold on. I'm actually kind of glad that didn't come off, so I wanted to show you this. Those threaded holes right there, there's a reason for that those are there. You want to take a bolt like this, it's an 8-125, and you're going to thread this in there. I'm going to put a little spray lube on it. Now here, see this bolt? See how it's got like that guiding nipple end? That's actually to help center the bolt so it doesn't cross thread. If you have something like this, you're not going to be able to use this because now you're catching only a couple of threads before the actual threads get in there, because this piece will bottom out. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a bolt like this. You're going to take a bolt like this, and you're going to use this bolt instead. If you have these, try to grind the tip off. So this, now that we're going to put this in place, what we're going to do, we're going to spray some WD in the hole. Like I said, these are 8-125. Most rotors are like this. We're going to thread this in. Now, we're going to use my little gun here. Okay, now it's bottomed out. I'm going to go a little bit more, like that. You don't want to try to pop it off using that bolt, because what'll happen, and I've done it, I've seen other people do it, I've done it myself, like I said, you'll actually break the casting out right there, and now you have no threads anymore. So it's not going to help you. So with that in place like that, and a little bit of pressure on it, wrap the rotor. Again, add a little more to it. Add a little more to it. See, it's moving now. See that? Now, how difficult was that? You saw how many times I hit it from the backside. Save your bolt. How many times did I hit it from the backside? Quite a few. And I gave it pretty good hits, and it did not want to come free. But now, that came free. Blow off, take brake clean, something, just clean off this hub surface area here. So now, I'm going to take the rotor and throw it on the floor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire wheel that pin. Make sure you wear eye protection when you're doing this. And never stand in a direct line of the wire wheel or grinding wheel or whatever. I'm going a little overkill on the top edge here where the boot goes. So now those mounting bolts, I'm going to clean those up too. Obviously use caution. You don't want to get your fingers caught in there. I mean, I've done it a million times. I'm just used to doing this. Yes, I've put my finger into the wire wheel, it cleans up nicely. And then a lot of times what you can do too is you can clean up the head there. Take pride in your work. Pretend it's your mom's car, your sister's car, your wife's car, your daughter's car, your son's car. That's what I do on everything I work on. Because I don't like comebacks. Alright, let's go back to the car. Now here we have the caliper bracket. This side moves absolutely perfectly, flawlessly. And if you look, it's beautiful. The grease is beautiful. So I'm not going to clean it up. I'm going to probably get slack for that, but I'm not going to clean it up. I'm leaving it alone. It's absolutely perfect. There's no reason to mess with it. You can look at that and you can see the rust and goo inside there. So what I usually do in a situation like this is brake clean. Get the rust and stuff out of there. Now what I'll probably do is take the boot off, and this boot should just pinch to the outside. Yeah, see that? So I'm going to clean all that gook out of there. Best way to do that is stick a rag through it and just smush it into the rag. So, and then I'm going to try to clean that out with like a screwdriver and a rag. Alright, so we're going to put the rag through the boot. I'll pull it through if I can. Come on, baby. Just like that. And then I'll just smush this into that. Because I want to get that nasty stuff out of there. Okay. That's perfectly fine now. And then what I'm going to do is, on this, I'm going to spray some brake clean in there. Take a little pocket screwdriver. Nastiness. Do it a couple times. See, it's getting better. Still nasty. Now, like I've told you guys too in the past, I'm going to be changing things up here on the channel eventually, not right yet. I'm going to get into more detail and stuff like that. I can't do it right now because this is my full-time job. You know, I work at the shop full-time. So that's what I need to do first. That's of utmost importance. I'm doing this after hours right now. That's why I can show more detail than I can in some other videos. So anyway, you're going to clean all of this up. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that open so it can dry up. Let the brake clean dry out of there. That should be absolutely fine. What I'm going to do now is let me get a wire brush and we're going to clean these shims. Whatever, clips, whatever you want to call them. A lot of times, I've explained this before, I don't like changing them if there's nothing wrong with them. A lot of times I've changed these, or I've seen other people change them, and the aftermarket ones don't fit 100% correctly all the time, and you wind up with a problem. You wind up with the thing overhanging, creating noise, stuff not fitting together correctly. I like to leave these alone, especially if they're in great shape, which these look like they are. Let's get a wire brush, let's get this cleaned up. All right, so really all you're going to do is just a nice little wire brush. I think I got this thing from Home Depot 10 years ago. Yeah, they wear out after a while, but and what are they, $8? $10? $12? So worth it. Plus you can use them for other stuff. You can clean off the threads on bolts that are overhanging, you know, where you can see the threads and you got to drag a nut over it. You can use this to clean that up. Comes in very handy for many different things. All right, so that's good. I'm happy with that. So now let's blow this off. We're going to clean off the hub. We're going to clean off the hub, and then we're going to get everything ready to go back together. So now let's see how the pin actually fits in there. That's all dried up. Yeah, fits fine. All right, let's put a little lube on that. Now, I've been asked in the past, I have told you what it is. Here it is, synthetic brake caliper grease. Get this at any part store. I've had this tub, I don't know how many years now, 10 years. But a lot of times, a lot of brake pads and stuff actually come with some kind of a lubricant in the kit. So as you see, I just put a little bit of lube in there. These little slits on the side, they allow the lube that might have been packed at the bottom to slide up. So just gonna coat this. You don't have to go bananas. I've heard people say in the past, oh, you're putting too much on. Okay, whatever. But see how it's actually like spring-loaded? In there, you can hear it actually compress. So that's perfect. So now what we're gonna do, we're going to put the little booty back on. Just get it to fit over. Put that in. And make sure the boot seals all up around the edge there. See that? Now it's all sealed up around the edge. It's nice and tight. Oh, see that? I just folded it. There we go. So now it's perfect. So now we're going to put a little bit of lube right where the pad rides. Here again, you don't have to put a ton of it. The thing I like about this, because there's also a clear one of this version of this stuff. The reason I like this is because you can see that you coated everything. See what I'm talking about? So let me continue here. I'm sorry about that. I have a tendency to get in the way of the camera, and I apologize for that. Like I said, you don't have to go bananas. You don't have to put a ton of it on there. So that's good, just like that. So, last thing before we start to assemble. The new rotor. The new rotor comes with an oil coating on it. Take brake clean and a rag and clean it off. You don't have to go bananas. You don't have to clean the hub surface or anything like that. Just where the brake pads ride. That's all you got to do. Now, if the rotor comes through with this colored coating, this gray coating all over the rotor, don't sand it off. Leave it on there. I can't tell you how many times I've seen some moron take a whiz wheel or sandpaper or something and sand it down to the bare metal. No, that's not what you do. You leave it on there. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed so when the pad rides on the surface of the rotor, it digs in, and this way it's only the painted surface actually is up to the point of the pad. It's perfect. It aligns perfectly. So leave it alone. So next thing we're going to do is we are going to just spray off this hub here, and then we're going to start to assemble. Now, one thing to pay attention to also, see the witness mark right there where the hole was, where the bolt came through? Line it up. Why, might you ask? Why do I want to line that up? Because if there's any imperfection in the hub that matched up with that hole, it's now lined up to it again. If you clock this thing, you know, one turn over, so this lug is here, so it's basically like this. If there was a high or a low there, now this thing is not sitting true. So if you have rotors with holes in them, or if you have a hub that has access holes in it, look at it before you, if you're using the old rotor and you're going to put it back on, look to see where everything is and line it back up and put it back on the way it came off. It'll save you a ton of aggravation. I've seen knocking noises, all sorts of weird stuff because people didn't line it back up. Okay, so let's catch a lug on there and let's keep going. Now, what did I mean by put a lug on there? Is it just that exactly? Put a lug on here. What I usually do, I put a nut on, it'll fit on there just perfectly. Then I'll catch a lug. And the reason for that is it holds everything steady. So when you're putting a caliper bridge on, caliper bracket on, whatever, everything's sitting the way it's supposed to. This way you're not fighting with the rotor falling all over the place. So let me start getting everything else on. All right, so now comes the caliper bracket, caliper bridge. These bolts, don't put anything on them. Don't put anti-seize on them. I see that too many times where people put anti-seize on. You're not supposed to do that. If you want to put anything on there, put some Loctite on there. Put some blue Loctite. It's not that strong, and it also saves the threads if you're that concerned about it. Like I said, I do these, I fix people's cars as if it was my own family's cars. And I'm dead serious about that. I'm not joking. That's how I treat every car that comes through my door. Every time a customer hands me a set of keys, they're trusting me to do the right thing. Because they put their families in their cars and everything else. I don't mean to preach, but it's the truth. It really is the truth. And you gotta treat it that way. At least I feel you do. So you can see I'm not torquing anything. I'm tightening it. It's tight. Okay, it's nice and tight. All right, now let's get the pads. Now the pads, as you can see, you have this clip. The clip is supposed to face, or supposed to be on the area of first contact, meaning, while this thing's going forward, the rotor spins this way. So that technically the first point of contact on a pad is here. So what you want to do is you want to put this part down first. Now these are kind of a pain. Actually, let me do the outside one first. Hang on one second. Now the reason I want to do the outside one first is because sometimes you fight with these things, and it's easier to do the outside one first to see what you got to fight with for when you get to the inside one. Of course, I can't see. There we go. Because I have the light from the camera hitting. So there we go. See that? Now, a lot of people make the mistake too. If you look closely, sorry about that. See this? This is a spring that actually goes to the outside and it helps pull the pad back out. So that goes to the outside, and that's actually like a slide right there. That's why that shim goes that way. So now let's try to get the inside one in. Okay. Usually that's that end that has like that little spring. Usually it's easier to put that in first. Okay, so now the pads are in place. So what's the next step? We have to compress the caliper. Okay, and this is where the C-clamp comes in handy. Let me get this where you can actually see it. All right, let me go get my C-clamp. Actually, this time I opted to not use the C-clamp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this cheapo brake caliper depressor. And I'm going to try to move it as close to center as possible, because what will happen is it's only going to push one piston more than likely. I mean, unless this thing's a very free caliper, which it might do both. Let's see. If it only did one, what I would do is I would then move the tool to this opening here. So, but this thing seems to be going pretty smooth, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, the caliper feels good. Everything's going in nice and nice. All right. That's all nice. I'm good with that. All right. Let's put the caliper on. Now, sometimes when you're dealing with pads that are spring-loaded, like some of them will have the spring that runs in between, it looks like a wishbone. Sometimes the pads will want to pop out, which can be a real pain when you're trying to put everything back together. So now on this, getting everything in place, since these things have flats on them, you want to get the flats right where the edge of the caliper is. You'll see there's actually a flat on the caliper too. And from there, where do I put the bolts? Right here. I prefer not to use a gun on stuff like this, because using a gun, how tight is it really? Okay. And there, as you can see, I mean, it's tight. I can absolutely go tighter if I wanted to, but that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So now, when you're done with that, obviously you take the lug nut off, take your hanger off if you used one. You really should. Something, anything. An old coat hanger works perfect. So that's all together. I mean, that was pretty simple. I'm going to do the other side now. And I'm not going to show you that because it's exactly the same as this side. Although I don't think that side's got a seized up pin. So, but we'll see. If I run across anything that's out of the ordinary or of worthy mention, I'll show you. Let me get that side done so we can get this done and back to the customer. I just wanted to show you, this is the other side. This is why I take everything apart. Remember the other one on the other side that was okay? It had no rust even here. This had rust creeping down. So this is a good thing. So now I'm going to clean this all up, wire wheel it, and put everything back together. Just wanted you to see it before I put it back together. I cleaned everything up. So now I'm going to clean these up and lube them up just like the other side. And then everything's going to go cleaned up and go back together. One last thing I want to mention, and I've made mention of this before and I'm going to make it again. When you're putting wheels back on, never thread the lug all the way to the base of the rim. Why, you might ask? Very simple. Here we go. We thread it on. A couple turns, that's it. So now the wheel is nice and loose. See that? Flopping all over the place. Okay. But why is that important? If you get called away, if something happens to you, you get called away from the car. Now you threaded those things on all the way to the base, and I've seen people do it. How does the next person know if you tighten them? How do they know you even had the wheels off? They don't know what you did. Let's say a shop steward has to come around And oh, Johnny Jr. got called away. His wife's having a baby. Go over. Yeah, let the car down. It's all done. Just pull it out. Meanwhile, all four wheels are on like that. They don't know. He pulls it out. No issue. If you pull it out with this, flopping around, you'll definitely know it. You'll know the wheel's not tight. You don't want a customer going down the road and having the wheel fall off. I'll tell you that right now. That makes for a bad day also. It's not something, you don't want that on your conscience. God forbid something happens. So, all right, let me tighten this up. Let me check the tire pressure, and we're going to go for a road test. All right, so I'm ready to go on a road test. Just did the brakes. What's the first thing you do when you get in the car? You pump the brakes. Right to the floor. I remember at the dealership one time, we had bays across from each other with a center alleyway. Guy did brakes, I don't remember what it was on, but the guy in the bay opposite of him was working on a Caravan. Now he had it up on the lift, to have like just the wheels were just off the ground. He was doing something under the hood, and it was just, he had it like that, basically so he wasn't straining, leaning over the car. The guy did brakes on something, I don't remember the car, and he put the thing in reverse and backed up. And, of course, he hit the gas and everything else in the process and realized he didn't have any brakes. And before he could react, the thing went across the shop, hit the Caravan. Thank God. The Caravan, the lift arms were tucked in. He had it up on a lift because it hit the Caravan and he got thrown back into his toolbox. And the lift arms being underneath the car caught the suspension in the rear and stopped it from crushing him. Amazingly enough, that's the same guy, the guy who got hit and thrown back, that's the same guy who broke his sternum. All right, so I'm back from the road test. Everything went fine. How I didn't hear this 2 weeks ago or last week when I drove this, it's got a rear wheel bearing going bad. And it's pretty loud. I filmed it, but it comes out like it's so dark outside right now, you can't see much of anything. All you can do is hear it. So I might include that in the clip tomorrow, because I'm going to make a video of me changing the wheel bearing. I just got to figure out which one it is. I can't tell. I think it's the left rear, but I'm not positive. So, and I'll show you the best way to figure that out. You need a partner. But yeah, so anyway, that's it. Hopefully you got something out of that video. I thought that was pretty interesting. If you're getting something out of my videos, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. All right, guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.